actually still sitting beside other human beings other than our immediate families, who's the head of CS at Fiix, Chris Contreras, who I've been working with quite closely for the last few months and really enjoying our work together, who's running CS at Adroll, and my partner in crime, Elizabeth Italiano, Winning by Design. We're so excited to have you here today. I want to get right into a hot topic right now. What's something, we've been working, I think the US is calling it sheltering at home. For some reason, Canada is just like quarantine. What's impacted you the most, or what's been most surprising about working from home? Chris Petko, I'm shooting it over to you first.
Wow, that's a great question. I mean, on the personal side, there's obviously the close quarters and the change in your day-to-day level of activity. But professionally, I think as a leader, one of the things that I've really been more cognizant of is everyone's own situation in quarantine. I'm fortunate that I have, a wife and 3 kids who keep me company throughout the day, and it has been somewhat pleasurable to hang out with the family more and more during the day, which is not normal. But there are folks out there that are single and living in a 300 square foot condo and don't have those outlets. So I think for me, it's being more cognizant of that and being more available to people like that, so they can chat about what's going on.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think everyone is in this unique situation, and every situation has its challenges. I think you said somewhat enjoyable. I can, living in a similar living situation, I can totally attest to that. But on the contrary, it could be, I'm trying to fit in workouts when I can, and usually that involves children crawling on me. But that's my limitation. Whereas there's tons of people around. So it's a good point, especially when you're managing a team, to be really aware of everyone's situation. Chris Contreras, how about you?
Yeah, no, in the similar light, and I think the working from home has been interesting. I have a 16-month-old daughter, so for me, it's a little bit different because she's running around the house all the time, which is great. So I got to be here for her first steps. We started our work from home about a week and a half earlier than most companies and most cities did. So I think at Adroll, we've been in. Yeah, next week would be 2 full months that we've been sheltered in place. And I'm right outside of the city here in New York. So we're at the epicenter. So it's a little bit different experience living in this area. But I would say, look, the team wise, it's forced us to be, I would say, a little bit more overly communicative and just be clear on what we're trying to focus on, internally with the folks on the team, and just make it a much easier relationship to manage versus hovering and being overbearing. You don't want to be a helicopter manager in this type of situation. We found that our teams have been performing significantly better because they have the flexibility to take a break when they need to, and then with their kids get some homeschooling, which I think I'm amazed by all the parents that I had the pleasure of working with that actually now have 3 jobs. They're teachers, their parents, and their employees as well. So it's been an interesting experience to help them as well in those situations. I'm a math tutor if anybody needs assistance. So.
Like a legit math tutor? Because you might be getting some calls after this.
Yeah, legit. I could do it.
I think that's a really interesting point, and I'd like to get to, after we do our round robin of what's impacting you and your teams the most, I'd like to drill down on this because, before all of this lockdown, different companies had different perspective on working from home, flex time. It was more considered a luxury. And now, what you said was people are getting more done and are more productive because we're not helicoptering them and because we're allowing them that flexibility, and it's incredible what people can achieve with that flexibility. So keep that on the back burner. I want to dig into that a little bit more. Jeff, over to you.
Yeah, I think some similar observations. I think mental health conversations. We're making sure that we're proactively bringing that up, which isn't something obviously that would be at the forefront previously. So there's definitely some different conversations happening. And then, to Chris's point earlier, just really cognizant of folks that are in closed quarters, and it's a bit of a pressure cooker, depending on folks' situation. So, everyone's having to be super mindful of that. I think overall it's been a net positive. We've instituted daily stand-ups, not something that we've ever done before. I feel like everyone knows each other more personally than we ever have, with you're kind of reading the stories of kind of children walking into meetings. We did a bring your kids to Zoom day the other day. I think overall it really has been a net positive. It's also been fascinating for the folks that have always been remote. The experience for them is now better because we're thinking about things like an all hands meeting and how do we make this the best all hands meeting it can be for everyone. And so all of a sudden the folks that were always remote are actually seeing a huge net benefit, as well as everyone kind of gets on the same page. So overall, lots of positives, I think, from my perspective. But yeah, I got to be super mindful of everyone's personal situation as well.
A better remote. Yeah, this is really great. And Natasha, how about you? How many people are in your organization now?
Yeah, so we have about 10. We're entirely virtual anyway. So it was kind of neat for us because it was just business as usual as this all happened. And it's nice because even from a hiring perspective, we don't really have to be concerned. We can hire for the best talent versus like location. I'm one of those people that live on my own. So I'm in the other situation where I'm not adjusting to anything, but that can be, the lines get blurred sometimes because then you feel like you're just always working. So I found that with COVID, having more structure in my day has been really helpful as well. And more video calls on the personal front, which is kind of interesting. Like had a FaceTime with my dad for the first time, which I've never done before. So yeah, it's been fun. And then one of our partners, her daughter likes to hop on our morning calls. So we've actually made her the VP of culture. So she's been making some really good suggestions like pancake day and pajama day. And so, yeah, we've just been trying to be really inclusive for everyone.
Okay. So first of all, that's an amazing idea. There's this thread on some group I'm part of where you actually refer to your children as your coworkers and you describe the ridiculous things that your coworkers do. But I love this. You actually give them a title. Natasha, I'd really love to know if you end up doing pajama day or maybe you've already done that.
We have done it, yeah. Just in the morning, yeah.
I love it. It's a great call. Jeff, you mentioned something around, and Chris, Petko, you both addressed the mental health. And I think we're all thinking about it. What are some tangible things that you are doing? Chris, when I first mentioned, like, what are some topics we should talk about? You're like, mental health, but I'm not qualified to actually talk about that. None of us really are. I mean, my I think minor, or maybe I think it was my major, I can't even remember now, in psych, definitely is not helping me out enough right now. What are you doing? Because we're put in this position where we have to address mental health and we can't just necessarily say, hey, let's walk over to our head of people or whatnot. We're being pushed into these positions as managers. So Jeff, and then Chris, Petko, you're next. What kind of things are you doing?
Yeah, we're being proactive with discussing people's hours. Are there hours that you can work that are a little bit better suited for your family? Maybe starting earlier and ending earlier, and being respectful of those boundaries. We have at our disposal lots of sort of mental health resources that we're not being shy to promote and make sure people take advantage of. Opening up, the office areas of the office if need be. If someone's working in a 900 square foot living arrangement and they need somewhere else to go. Opening up things like the office, allowing folks to take things from the office if it makes your working environment better. A chair, a monitor, things like that. So I think there's lots of little things. I think vacation's also important. I feel like everyone hoards their vacation away, but I think sometimes it's important to take it and not that you can get on a plane right now and go to Disney World, but just making sure that we're just making things as comfortable and being as open and communicative as possible. And every meeting these days starts with how are you doing before we get into anything else.
That's really good. Thank you for sharing that. I can just see people leaving the Fiix office with like a monitor and a chair wheeling down the totally empty streets of Toronto right now. Chris, Petko.
Yeah, I think, it's interesting because what I found in customer success and customer experience groups is it's generally filled with people who really enjoy helping others. And when they're forced into an introverted kind of quarantine, isolated situation, it can be very stressful for some. And, I wasn't joking when I said I'm not qualified. I don't feel qualified at all, but I do know mental health is a very complex topic. And I think the first step is to do a better job of understanding it. So, what we've done at Uberflip was we actually have an in-house therapist, and we had her come in and do a lunch session on things to look out for. How does stress work? How does stress become elevated? And how does anxiety work? And I think part of that is mental and part of that is physical. And she, went through things to look out for, things to be cognizant of, how to talk to people and get them to open up and share with you, their situation, and just be in a position where you can listen and ask some of those questions to get people to open up. And I think, there's no silver bullet to this, and I don't think there's a one size that fits all, but I think understanding it as much as you can and being there for people you work with and who work for you is a great first step.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Was the therapist brought in before all this, or?
No, she's available to all employees and is paid for by the company as well. So you could book her at any point. And she has, I think, office hours every Tuesday, Thursday. So, and she's always been fairly used, which I think is great.
Yeah, that is amazing.
And I think also talking about mental health in a very open dialogue removes any negative stigma around it as well. And showing vulnerability around that topic as well as leaders can help others feel more comfortable bringing it up to you or to someone else.
Yeah. And, Chris, I know you're always, you might be surprised that I say this or not, but I've always found you to be someone who very easy to talk to. So I'm not surprised that you are aware of this and approaching it with such sensitivity and empathy. So thank you for sharing some of that. Chris Contreras, I know that you're doing some interesting things at your company around mental health. Care to share?
Yeah, definitely. I'm like, the interesting piece is that we have employee resource groups, and we lit one up in the beginning of the year, and like the timing was perfect. It's called Roll Able. Like we tend to name our ERGs based on like our company name. And we, the group was put together based on folks who have either suffered mental health issues or have had family members and understand it a little bit deeper. And we get, outside folks to come in and help as well. But they put together an employee resource guide, which I found to be super useful for the broader organization. And it just gives like practical guidance on like taking time to pause, to move away from your desk. You were mentioning earlier, like folks tend to burn the candles from both ends when they work from home and they're not used to it. So like just, certain things like, taking time for yourself, like try to do some outdoor activity, either on your backyard or in your house, get your system going, donating your time, navigating through your thoughts, and then have open dialogue. So as a leader, I'm on the same page, where you have to make people feel comfortable being vulnerable, and listen to and understand the cue points when someone is at that boiling point. It could be fatigue, it could be anything that triggers, a situation, and you just have to be mindful of it and just be open with folks and make sure that they can come to you and have those conversations. So, I think it's an interesting time to like roll out this ERG, and it's worked out to be very helpful.
That's a really good point. Thank you, Natasha. I was thinking about you as Chris was chatting, because you mentioned before, you're used to working from home, you are living alone, and those lines tend to blur, but you're a little bit of an expert in it. And I think last time we were chatting just on the phone, you were going to pick up your bike. I don't know where you're biking to these days, but what are some things, how do you and your whole company's work remote anyway. So do you have any formal parameters that you put on the team to say, like, you must take breaks, or, things that you do other than being aware of their flex, being aware of flex time and whatnot?
Yeah, so like when this started to hit and kids were pulled out of school, we worked out particular schedules with staff members who had kids. So they've got certain hours blocked out through the day where it's just time that they're with their children, and maybe they're homeschooling or whatever it might be. And we just work around that. So we've adapted. For me personally, absolutely, my bike has been a total savior. And I'm in Toronto, so I'll zip out for a ride, maybe late morning, during the day, during the week, if I think there's not going to be anyone out there and it's like a safe time to ride. So that's been really helpful. What else do we do? Yeah, I think like really trying to be more acutely aware of listening for cues as well. Like if somebody who doesn't make mistakes is suddenly making mistakes, or somebody gives a hint that they're used to, we're used to working from home, but they're used to going to a coffee shop, but they're not able to do that anymore. We've just tried to reach out to them and offer more opportunities for them to have more social interaction with us. So we're doing more optional socials as well for the team to get together. And yeah, just trying to be really understanding through this time, because it is affecting everyone. I will say that I feel like right now it's very different to how it was mid-March. And, those few weeks in March when everyone was like varying degrees of panic and not really knowing what was happening, where I do feel like now everyone's kind of settling into this a bit more and they seem a lot more comfortable. Like we don't know how long it's going to last, but it's definitely, it seems to be becoming a bit easier now.
Yeah. You bring up this is a good transition, because I do want to start talking a little bit about now and a little bit further into the future. And same with you, I think, originally, it was a little bit rough when I was working with clients. A lot of transitions needed to happen. There were layoffs. It was a bit chaotic for organizations that weren't set up to work remotely. Now everyone, as you said, Natasha, everyone's settling into this and becoming more productive, getting a little bit more settled. A lot of companies I'm speaking with or hearing about or reaching out to us are actually saying, no matter what happens, when these limitations are lifted, they're going to adopt a more remote work from home culture. The pharmaceutical industry, one company, approached us and said, we're used to a 90% on the road in-person sales culture. We're actually going to shift to 30% on the road. We have, companies like, that are actually shutting down their headquarters permanently. So I think, I'm sure you'll all agree, to some extent, the world will not go back to the way it was previously. So what I'd like to talk to you all a little bit about now is, what do we think that's going to look like in the way of customer success? Do you think that the focus of CS is more important now, or almost the same as it was before, or more important? And also, just sort of compounding questions here. You can pick and choose what you talk about. But how do you think your customers are most impacted now, and what are you doing to address that? So kind of a lot of questions throwing at you. We're going to go round robin. You can pick and choose what you want to say. Does anyone want to go first? Go, Chris Petko.
I'll volunteer. So I think, one thing, as we talk about mental health of our coworkers and our teams, our customers are no different. Everyone's working from home and everyone's stressed, and everyone is now exposed to this new isolation and quarantine, and we have to be cognizant of that as well. So I think how we do customer success and how we interact with our customers will obviously change. And I think it's funny, we've seen an increase in things like support tickets, because I feel like we just have more customers at home wanting more interaction, and it's not necessarily basis for anything other than just wanting a more of an interaction with someone. So I think part of that is going to change, obviously, in the future. I think also with more of a remote work front, you're going to see, to echo what Natasha said earlier, and what I've always firmly believed in, is hiring skill over geography. And it's going to force leaders to become better leaders and be more clear with expectations from employees. What is success, and how do you achieve that success in your role? There are some folks who are extremely much more productive now working from home and being focused, but there are going to be some that are less productive. So I think it's going to really depend on us understanding the best way to help our employees get the best performance from themselves. And sometimes that's working from home. Sometimes that's working in an office in in a semi-private or open space. And I think there's been some great studies done by Google, and I know by Lazy Boy as well, where, you know, they changed their office space to make it private, semi-private, open, to a point where no one even had an assigned desk. So I think, you know, we're just becoming more cognizant of the needs of people as individuals. And I think this is just going to accelerate learning a little bit.
Sorry about that. My duct taped light apparently did not want to last through the hour. working remotely in life hacks. Yeah. I just want to start a fire. Okay.
I'm happy to jump in as well.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, so I think, you know, for us, similar, you know, to Mr. Petko, my fellow Chris, you know, our customers have been, you know, obviously impacted as well. Like we target direct to consumer brands. So in the small, medium business market. So like for real, our customer base has been impacted with the stay at home, but we've been able to help them navigate through the shift into like their pure play e-commerce strategy, and trying to shift like our customer success team to focus more on driving education and giving them more tools that sometimes is outside of our tool set, and give them the flexibility to be able to do more with less in that scenario. And I hear you. I think 100%, you know, the mental health goes across our customer base. So we've seen an uptick in their outreach to us on the interactions that we have with them as well. And I think it goes back to, you know, Chris's statement that they also yearn that connection as well. So how do we create that environment that is educational for them, gives them the opportunity to be able to do more, you know, in these times where they're used to the foot traffic in their local establishments, but then also shift their strategy into that e-commerce world where potentially some of them were dabbling in it, and now it's like they have to do it 100%. And it's helped. We've seen certain verticals within our customer base grow exponentially, you know, on the waves of COVID, where they weren't even thinking about like a full-fledged e-commerce strategy. So, and we've been enabling that growth for them, you know, with our solution. So it's been great.
Yeah, same experience, Chris. We're seeing some customers busier than ever, essential industry customers busier than ever. For those that aren't deemed sort of an essential industry and are in that space, there's a ton of projects that have been kicking off. So we've also, we've been busier than ever, which I didn't expect that to be the case kind of heading into this. And I think you're probably all experiencing the same. I'm seeing a huge spike in the need for data and the need for reporting. You know, just as us as CS leaders, you know, the sort of the first phase, let's get our hands around what this looks like and what's the impact. Exact same thing with our customers. They're going through the exact same thing. So really a renewed interest in conversations around data, around reporting, around analytics, of which, you know, luckily being in SaaS, there's no shortage of data. And, you know, to pick up on kind of the new normal, I think, you know, there's two sides to that, which you kind of brought up, you know, Julie, there's the internal, you know, what's the new normal for us and our teams, and are we going to be working differently? And then I'm increasingly interested in what's the new normal for our customers, you know, whether it's based on new legislation or sort of self-imposed changes to their business. But absolutely, we're going to see a bit of a shift, I think, in what they value in all of our solutions. And so just making sure that we're kind of getting ahead of that and able to support customers through it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I was chatting with a company I work with, and my husband owned a restaurant in Toronto for about 9 years. And so they were asking us a little bit about what we think the state of the restaurant industry is. And it was a really interesting conversation because, you know, will people ever feel comfortable when will people feel comfortable going back into the restaurants, and what will restaurants have to do to make themselves comfortable? And I think the office culture is similar. So it's an interesting thought experiment. Natasha, I would love, the interesting thing about your company is that you speak to your customers' customers. And so you have exposure to a ton of customers. I'd love to hear, and if you could share a little bit around what they're sharing with you right now, and any, you know, interesting insights as to how they're thinking about life now, has their environment changed, or their relationship with their, you know, with their software provider changed?
Yeah. So I think it's a really interesting time, just a side note for CS right now. Like I feel this is CS's time to shine because company-wide, companies are having these spending freezes. So win-loss, like new deals, new business deals are slowing down, but it's all about like doubling down on your customers and making sure that they're getting value. So I was actually surprised. We have a few clients that when this started to hit, they said, we want to shift our interviews with you away from win-loss and focus more on churn. And so we're doing these interviews, but we're finding that the actual decision factors of why customers are choosing to downsell or churn isn't actually COVID related. They're decisions that were made already. It was just the timing, or it's like all the same things. It wasn't sticky enough when they had to look at what to cut. It was the products that weren't deemed mission critical. They weren't getting their ROI. They weren't seeing the value. They're the ones, and we are seeing some downsells as well. But I've only seen a very small percentage of churns related to COVID specifically. But that might change, a month from now or 2 months from now as this goes on. But yeah.
Although, in a way, a lot, you said something where a lot of companies are forcing themselves to look at all of their spend because of the environment. And so, and then when they realize, we're not getting enough impact out of, these suppliers, that's who they cut. So, I always say to our clients, as you think about your customer journey, you actually have to remind customers of the impact that they were looking to achieve when they bought you and the impact that they're continuing to achieve, because it's easy to forget. And, Jeff, you mentioned data is as important as ever, both for you and for your customers. But we constantly need to be in their face about, here is what is helping you out, and here's what's providing you value. And to tie in what Chris Contreras was saying, sometimes we need to be more proactive. And while we don't want to sell to our existing customers pervasively, especially right now, our products can often help them be way more efficient and effective, especially if they have less resources, by talking to them about how they can adopt your technology in new ways can actually help them through some tough times with limited resources, limited people, and whatnot. What do you, anyone jump in? This is, I really want to just sort of get some last thoughts from everyone before I just noticed the time is flying by. And we only have a couple minutes left. I'd love to round robin and just get a last thought from everyone on what we talked about today. And if you want to share, we already know that Natasha does pajama days, but if you want to share one fun thing that you do to keep spirits up with your teams or with your customers, that would be a great way to close out. So, one final thought and a fun thing that you do. Chris Contreras, I'm going over to you because I know your fun thought. I hope you mentioned the really fun stuff he's behind you, because I mentioned
Yeah, no, so I tend to, if anybody who's watching the stream sees there's a new stuffed animal almost every day. I think we're at our limit at this point, so I'm not purchasing any more for my daughter. But honestly, I think the fun thing that I'm doing with my team, besides the different stuffed animal in the background, is we do like a weekly trivia night. So it's actually tonight, and I'm the one who hosts it. I collate all the questions. It's not like I'm paying a service, I'm doing it myself. So we've had 3 weeks and 3 winners, and it's getting like more competitive every week. So a lot more folks are joining. So just trying to create an environment that normally folks, when we were in the offices, they would want to hang out after work, et cetera. So do that. And then a final thought that's not, related to this piece. I think from a perspective of like the customer and the relationships that we're driving, Chris Petko mentioned it eloquently in the beginning, but I'm like, we value our customers, and we shine in this environment because our CS teams are consultants, and they operate in a world where the revenue really doesn't impact us. It's actually the customer's usage within our platforms and our solutions that enable our excitement and our ability to be better in what we do. So I think this time is the right time to shine, like Natasha mentioned, for our teams.
That was a great summary. Thank you. And if you want to share your trivia questions to make it easier for other people to host trivia, that would be awesome.
Yeah, I have Excel documents. I'll send it.
Okay, perfect. Jeff Cann, how about you?
Yeah, I completely agree. This is CS's moments to shine, and I often think they're the shock absorbers for the business. We're the ones to to immediately be able to get our hands around sort of what's happening, but we're also the ones to be able to help guide our customers and our companies through. I mean, our companies rely on us just as much as our customers do. And so, final thought on that is let's not let go of this sort of overly human phase that we're in right now, where barriers are kind of coming down with customers and internally. And I think there's one thing that we continue on out of this. It's being human and being human with our customers. I think we're all having interactions with them in better and deeper ways than we ever have, which also not something that I would have thought of coming to this. Coincidentally, Chris, also we got some trivia action going on Fridays, which has been a great way to unwind a little bit on a Friday, as well as some virtual happy hours we have throughout the week with different teams. So those have proven to be pretty popular and successful as well.
Oh, thank you. Natasha?
Yeah, I mean, I just have to echo what everyone else said about the time, and the pajama days and the pizza days, or the pancake days, are working pretty well. So I'll let you know if we come up with any others.
Take a screenshot, share it. Petko, how about you?
Yeah, I think, keeping in mind that we're living in this world of this unknown, right? We don't know what's going to happen, but we're all in the same boat. And I think, just focusing on the positives, right, has really helped tremendously. And I think, echoing what everyone has said already, CS is becoming increasingly important as a connection to our customers. So that'll never go away. And I think there's just going to be more focus on being available for our customers to help them through this time as well. And things that we're doing that kind of works. We have a coffee every morning at 9 a.m. virtual coffee, which is great. And we've also done a few virtual workouts, which is a little bit awkward, but you know what? It's a great way to start the day, and it's a great way to bond with the team and keep everyone accountable, because you can't let the physical fitness suffer during these times.